This is the Bringing Business to Retail podcast with today's guest, Becky Mollencamp.
Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast on SelenaKnight.com. Stay ahead of the competition by opening your doors to business experts so you can learn, grow, and be inspired. Passionate about bringing business strategies to independent retailers, please welcome your host, Selena Knight.
Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. I'm your host, Selena Knight, the retail strategist, and today we are going to be talking with the fabulous Becky Mollencamp all about LinkedIn. Now, I have to say, if there is one social media platform that I really wish in all my years of retail I would have worked on more, it's LinkedIn. Why? Well, Becky and I are going to share with you, we're going to talk a lot about how LinkedIn is a lot different now from the way it used to be. But essentially what I missed out on was, nearly 10 years of retail, all those relationships that I built, all the people who saw me as an expert in the field that I was in the type of shop that I had, in my marketing, in my social media management, all those things. I was not on LinkedIn to cultivate that social proof or to cultivate those relationships. Sure, I had a LinkedIn profile, but I think I created it when I first opened my store, and it was all about the job I'd done before that. So in no way did it reflect the brand that I was trying to portray or the image that I was trying to achieve for either myself or for my store. And this is the thing, right? We can leave places like LinkedIn out of our social media strategy because we just don't know how to use them. And, the time and the effort that it takes to learn something new, quite often we just feel like it's too much hard work. But I have to say that LinkedIn is appearing more and more on my social media management calendar. Try saying that fast 5 times. So here in my business, we put together, I call it an editorial calendar. I don't know if that's the right term or not, but I put together a calendar that shows where we are going to be promoting and what we're going to be promoting. In fact, I'll take some of that away. I have some ideas, and then my amazing Monica and my assistant, Wilkes, both of them, work together to flesh it all out. So for example, November, our theme is all about working smarter in the holidays and making more money. Okay, it's a little bit long-winded, but that's the gist of the whole thing. So now when we're putting out content, we sit there and we go, okay, so will this strategy work? Will this strategy work? And believe it or not, you're probably thinking, Sal, why are we talking about LinkedIn if we're supposed to be featuring maximizing holiday sales and working smarter in the holidays? Well, that's because I think you are missing a trick if you are not on LinkedIn. If you are not out there just utilizing what's available for free, then you are potentially losing thousands of dollars worth of sales. So in today's episode, Becky and I are going to talk about how to kind of dip your toe into LinkedIn, what you should be using it for, the kinds of things that you should be posting. But remember, this all comes back to your promotional strategy. Now, speaking of which, I just want to give you the last heads up that our ultimate holiday promotion kit is about to launch. So at the end of this week, if you're listening to this when it goes live, it is going to launch. And when it launches, it is going to be more expensive than it is now. So if you are looking for a way to plan out your holiday promotions so that you can maximize the amount of revenue that you are bringing in, if you want the step-by-step procedure that my team and I have used in my retail stores to make sure that we are getting every last dollar out of every promotion that we put out over the holidays, then this is the kit for you. If you want to create a system that you can replicate year in, year out, that will help you increase your sales and profitability no matter what time of year, then this is the kit for you. Inside it, you are going to get a complete toolbox that will show you how to create successful promotions right throughout the holidays and any other time of year that can maximize your sale. You're going to get the ultimate promotion creator. This is my step-by-step process to choosing the right products to sell and how you're going to sell them. You're going to get free email swipe copy. That is literally cut and paste. Insert your words of your product in here and you can send these out to your email list. You're going to get my easiest way to increase sales guide, and I'm going to show you how to get that average sale up so that you can maximize the amount of money that you are bringing in during these holidays. Plus, there's also my social media and email templates. You're going to get over 50 templates, 50 image templates that you can use throughout your social media and throughout your email, your Facebook cover, your Instagram, your Facebook ads, all those kinds of things, all themed for you for the holidays. But best of all, I don't know which part's my favorite, but for me, I think it's this part because it's the part I'm not always so great at, is your campaign goals and marketing budget calculator. So I'm going to show you how to calculate exactly how much you need to spend in your marketing in order to get the returns that you want for your campaign. Plus, I'm going to step it out day by day. So there's no overwhelm, there's no stress. In the lead up and during the process, you'll get my step-by-step countdown, tick off everything as it needs to be done. As it's done, tick it off, and you know that you have the setup for the best holiday promotion kit ever. Now, there's over $2,000 worth of value, but if you pre-order it before it goes live at the end of this week, you can have all of it for just $97. Yes, just $97. Now, when it launches, it is not going to be that price. So grab it now while it's still a bargain, and you can be well on your way to having the best holiday promotions that will make your cash register ring. Okay, now speaking of cash registers ringing, let's jump into today's episode with the remarkable Becky Mollencamp. Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. Today, we are talking all about how you can use LinkedIn to get more press coverage, to get yourself out there, and to find more customers. And Becky Mollencamp is going to tell us how. So welcome to the show, Becky.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wow, LinkedIn, before we just jumped on to go live, we were talking about how it can benefit retailers, and we just kind of brainstormed, and we came up with a bunch of reasons on why retailers should be on LinkedIn. But first, before we get to those, before we jump into the meat and potatoes, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my background is journalism. So talking about media is something I know because I started out in newspapers, then spent a lot of time in magazines. Then about 13 years ago, I left that world, at least full-time employment, to become self-employed. Still did a lot of writing for media, and I continue to do some writing for different media outlets. But I've shifted in the last 5 or 6 years to doing more work for corporate clients, and I do a lot of content creation, blogs, white papers, case studies, all that type of thing. And what's helped me grow my business now as a self-employed person has been LinkedIn, and I've come to love it and use it a lot. And it has really, it is responsible for a lot of my income. People find me through LinkedIn. It's not me even searching them out. People are finding me. So I'm a big advocate for LinkedIn. And while I don't know, it may not be the number one source for a retailer to use for finding clients, there is so much more to LinkedIn than I think people even realize for how it can help your business, that I think that there are things that you may not even be thinking as a retailer where LinkedIn could actually really be helpful for you.
I saw on one of your blog posts that you've got over $50,000 worth of income in the last year just from people finding you on LinkedIn. And that was only 3 clients.
Right. Yeah. And that was just last year. And in this last month, I've had about a half dozen inquiries that have come through LinkedIn. And I just signed a big retainer client for a couple of $1,000s a month. And it was someone who found me through LinkedIn. I've been using it so long and have been so active on it that I'm now at the point where people are finding me. I don't want to give people pie in the sky ideas that you're going to be able to get on LinkedIn tomorrow and suddenly have, $10,000 clients coming to you, or that you're going to be selling, your stuff everywhere because of it. But if you learn how to really use LinkedIn and get active, there's a real opportunity there because a lot of people aren't using it fully. They don't understand it. They're spending all their time on Facebook and Instagram, and with good reason. Those are great sites. But LinkedIn has been really overlooked by a lot of people because people think of it as something that's just for job seekers. But that is not at all the case. There's so much more happening there. And so I think for people who are maybe like on the fence or thinking about it, now's the time to act because there's a lot more people starting to look at and starting to use LinkedIn that haven't been. So if you can start getting a presence there now, you're really ahead of the curve.
Oh, one of the things that I've found is, I go through LinkedIn all the time looking for retail store owners. I just do a little, I was going to say stalking, but it's not even that. It's sort of just some background. I like to see who my customers are. I like to get a feel for where they live. And I can tell you that I do searches all the time for shop owner, boutique owner, retail store owner, a whole bunch of those kinds of keywords. And if somebody actually appears, 9 out of 10 times they don't have their name. It just says, store owner, Austin, Texas. And I'm like, well, that doesn't help anybody do anything. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your store is. I don't know what you sell. I don't know if you're a physical shop or an online store. So do you have any tips to maximize that? I guess you call it your profile?
Yes. Well, there's so much we could talk about there. Maybe we can break it down some, but I will say the number one mistake people are making when it comes to LinkedIn, and this is regardless of, where you're at in your career or what you're using it for. The biggest mistake people use is the biggest mistake they make is they don't really use it. So people treat it like it's an online resume and that's it. So they might go in and they might put up their, job experience and their education, and then that's about it. And then they never look at it again. And so the biggest thing that you can do to optimize your profile or to make your presence known is to actually have a presence. Go on there and make sure that things are current. And that means have a current photo, have your current title. And actually, one of the biggest things that I teach and preach is that what LinkedIn calls your headline, which is what you were talking about as far as just a job title or whatever you choose to use that for. People aren't really using that in a really advantageous way. So when you have search results, the only things that show up are a photo, your name, that headline or title, and then where you live. Like that's it. That's what people get to look at and decide whether they're going to click and check you out. And what most people do for that headline is they put owner and the store name, or they put retailer or something like that. And then that's it. So now that really doesn't tell me much of anything. If you want to grab people, you want to maximize that space. The number one thing everyone should do besides putting up a current good professional photo is really thinking about that headline. It should be a tagline. It should be something that reels people in. Tell people what you do, who you do it for, and what benefit they get. So think that through. And if you just make that one change to your profile, I promise you're already ahead of 95% of people because they aren't thinking that through. And so like you said, when you go to somebody, when you search and you're not seeing much there, you're not going to click on it. But if you see something that says retailer selling eco baby products that make your life better or that reduce diaper waste or whatever it is, that's going to pull me in because now I know more about what you're doing and why and who's the market.
And I was just thinking I was thinking of some taglines for some of my clients while we were going along. And I was thinking, curated homewares for the Hamptons home lover, just things like that. It doesn't have to be wordy or lengthy. It just has to tell people what you do other than retail store owner.
Right. And it can't be lengthy and wordy, which is what's really nice. I mean, it really forces you to think things through because you don't get a lot of space there. And so a lot of people just don't take advantage because I think maybe they haven't thought about that before. They don't have a great tagline or elevator pitch. But I mean, it really has to be short. But if you want to maximize it, then really think that through. And I think it's a great exercise for anyone to go through to come up with that really pithy statement that tells people exactly what you do, who it's for, and what the benefit is. Because if you can't do that, then you probably need to do some work on your messaging anyway.
That is a really good tip. And it's very similar. I was at the Digital Marketer Conference a couple of months back, and one of the speakers said exactly what you just said. So I had on mine, I think it just had retail strategist, and now it says retail mentor, keynote speaker, and something else that I can't think of right now. But I actually sat there and thought, what are the 3 things that I want people to know about what it is that I do? And I have to go back now and check my tagline to make sure that it's good, because I didn't check it before we started this conversation. But I wanted to jump quickly. You were talking about how people think LinkedIn, they treat LinkedIn just as an online resume. How much of your background should you put in if you're a retail store owner? Like, should you put in that you worked, as a waitress? Or I sort of feel like mine was a progressive step. So I was in the sustainability industry in a completely different field. And then I moved into eco baby products. So I kind of figured as people looked through my profile, they could see that it was a natural step. But if it's not a natural step, do you feel like people should put all of their background in? Should they be selective in what they stick in there?
So I have two immediate thoughts. And the first one is, this is not you applying for a job. You're under no legal or other kind moral obligations to share everything about your background with a potential employer. This is your site. You get to choose what information you share. So don't feel like, oh gosh, well, if I omit this job I had, then I'm kind of lying to people. That's not at all what's happening here. So you get to choose. So don't feel like you have to include anything that you don't want to include or that doesn't feel like it's right. And my other thought is, this is your story. So think about what story you want to tell, and let that guide what you do and don't include. So if you went from waitress to owning this retail empire, that might be part of the story you want to tell. You want people to know that look what I've accomplished, or maybe that's part of what, if you're looking for speaking gigs and you want to tell the story of how you go from waitress to retail empire, person in 10 years or whatever that is, then it might be important to include that because it is part of your story. If it's really bears no relevance on the story you're trying to tell, if it's not telling people about your knowledge base or why you do what you do or what makes you unique, then I would say you don't need to include it. If it's not adding anything, don't put it in just to have filler, because I think that it's just going to get people, it'll confuse people. It might make people look at you in a way that you're not wanting them to do. So think about the story you want to tell, how you want to be perceived, and then make sure that whatever you're including is taking people down that road. And that includes not just what you choose to include as far as jobs, but then what you list under those jobs, what skills you talk about, or you can be again, it's your site, it's your page. You get to decide what you do there. So you don't have to follow traditional conventions and say, oh, I have to put 4 bullet points under each job and talk about, what skills I had. I mean, if you're using LinkedIn really just to try and get speaking gigs, then underneath each job, you can tell a little story and how that job helps you tell your story, how that relates to what it is you will speak about. So the very first thing that I tell people is to have a strategy. So just like you would with anything else you do in marketing, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or wherever, ads, your website, we always like to start with a strategy. You want to have a plan. And so what is your plan for LinkedIn? If your plan is if you're a job seeker and you're using LinkedIn, then you have one method you would follow, because your goal is to find a job. So you're going to probably take a more traditional approach with listing everything kind of like a resume. If your goal is to get speaking gigs or to get media attention, then you're going to probably want to take a very different approach. And so come up with a strategy first and then start to fill in all that information. And if you've already got information on there, now go back, think through a strategy and think about, how do I need to change things to make sure that everything I'm presenting here is really helping drive forward my goals.
At this point, I'm sitting there thinking, as soon as I get off this call, I'm going back through my LinkedIn profile.
Every time I talk to anyone about LinkedIn, that's what happens. Because I think a lot of us, for a lot of people, the last time we really looked at our LinkedIn was when we left a 9-to-5 gig, or when we graduated college, or whatever that last time that we were looking for jobs. And then we just kind of let it sit there. And maybe we occasionally go update the photo, or we add in a little bit more about our experience, but we don't really think about it as a comprehensive marketing tool, which it can be if you want to use it that way. And so when I start talking about that in that way, people do start to think, oh boy, I don't know that I've looked at this in a while.
I know. And one of the things you were saying to me before we jumped on the call was that if people are Googling, let's say they're looking for, some sort of fashion specialist, if they Google that, you're saying one of the top things that comes up is people's LinkedIn profiles. So having those keywords in your profile can actually get you found on Google.
Yes, it can. I mean, Google loves LinkedIn. I don't know what kind of relationship they have, but I do know that, like, if you search your name and you have a LinkedIn profile, even if you don't use it, very likely it's going to show up on that very first page, and even within the first few entries. And a lot of people are surprised when they Google themselves and find that, and they think, but I don't even use LinkedIn. But guess what? It's showing up because Google loves LinkedIn. So you might want to be thinking about what it is that people are going to find if they find you that way.
Oh, now you've got me. I've got so many things firing off in my brain. Sometimes when I have guests on it, I almost lose words because I've got so many questions to ask. So my next question is about, I think you call it the summary section. It's kind of the part where you can write as much or as little as you want. Now, just listening to you speak, I'm wondering, should you almost treat this like an about me section and tell your story? And, a lot of people just say, this is what I did and this is what I'm doing now. But from the information you've just given, I was thinking maybe if you, depending on your strategy, because you said you might have one strategy for speaking and one strategy just to get out there and potentially find new clients, because for a lot of retailers, professional, busy people are our clients. So you choose what you put in that summary to more tell the story about the strategy that you're trying to achieve. Does that make sense? I'm in a very roundabout way saying that.
No, very much so. And you're right. I think there's a lot of mistakes that people make. And one of the other big mistakes people make on LinkedIn is they just rehash what's in the information below, their education and experience, and they just kind of rehash that in the summary. And if you spend much time as a job seeker, one of the things you will learn from HR people is, don't just give me your experience on your cover letter. I can read that as soon as I see the resume. I don't need you to just regurgitate everything from your experience. Tell me what makes you stand out, what makes you unique, what are you going to be able to bring to the table, right? So the cover letter is something that should be entirely different than the resume that's attached. And it's the same for LinkedIn. Someone can look right below that summary and see your experience and everything you're calling out on that. So why do they need to reread it there? And this is, if somebody clicks on if you got them with the tagline and they click on your profile, the summary is usually one of the first things they're going to check out because it's right there underneath all of that. And it's one of the few places where you can actually have a chance to communicate something that's not just like a bulleted list. So yes, you want to do more than most people do. A lot of people, it's 50 words and there's nothing there, or they just rehash their experience. Instead of, and I like that you said an about you page or about me page, but I would actually say it's almost an about you page. So you want to try and take the approach of, what am I bringing to my clients, to my customers, or if it's the media that you're trying to attract or somebody who's hiring speakers, you're speaking directly to them and how you can help them. So while it's about you, it really should be written in a way that appeals to them, because let's face it, we're all pretty selfish people in the world, and we want to know, how are you going to help me? Whether it's your potential client or a journalist, everyone's looking to think, all right, well, how do you help me? I don't really care about you, right? So that's what you should be writing everything in that tone, like saying how you're going to be able to help them. So if you want to do speaking, what is so great about the approach you take or the message that you share, and how is it going to uplift or inspire their audience? And if it's for clients, talk about the benefits of your product and how it's going to make their lives better. No one really cares about the 4 years you spent doing retail or whatever. People don't care about that. They want to hear about what's in it for them. So that's what that section should really be. And also try to make it scannable, because a lot of people just write this big giant block of copy, and that turns people away. Make it bullets, make it short paragraphs, make it something interesting so that people will read it all.
And I think this is somewhere where you really inject your personality. A lot of retailers, I think they hide behind, I say they hide behind the shop counter, but they hide behind this pretend corporate facade, when in actual fact, being an independent retailer is about everything. Like, it's the antithesis of a corporate facade. So they're very plain and they're very vanilla, but in actual fact, what draws people to your store is you. It's that personality, it's the vibe that you give out, it's the your values, your qualities, the way you curate the items in your store. So do you think that this is the time where you put that personality in?
Yes, and everywhere is a place to put your personality in. Even LinkedIn is the largest professional network online that exists, and professional is definitely a key word in that, but it doesn't mean professional doesn't have to mean boring. And I think people get that confused somehow, that somehow being professional means that you can't be yourself or express yourself or, wear a pretty color or, whatever it is. Like we think we have to be stuffy. Professional just means you know what you're doing, right? It means you're an expert and that you're the best at what you do and that you know your industry and your field. And that doesn't have to be boring. And if you work, particularly if you're in a fun retail environment and doing something fun, your page should reflect that. It doesn't mean that this is a place for you to share cat pictures or talk about what you ate for lunch necessarily, but definitely let your personality shine in the language that you use. Your photo should be professional, but that doesn't mean you can't be a little fun or smiling or laughing or wearing great colors or whatever that is. There's also LinkedIn has now for a while has had a cover photo, just like they have on a lot of other social networks. That's another great place to let some personality shine and show what you do and bring in that color and that life. And certainly the summary statement is also a place to do that. And I think if you're looking for speaking and media attention in particular, you really want your personality to shine, because people, when they're looking for a speaker or they're looking for somebody to quote in an article, they do not want stuffy and boring and somebody that they think is not going to bring any energy to what they're doing. They want personalities. That's what people are looking for in those situations. But even if you're talking about ideal clients, I think we all know that people generally buy from people. They want to know as much as they can about the brand they're buying from. Brands fit into our personality and into our lives. And why do we buy Apple products? I mean, sure, part of it's because they work well, but also because of the lifestyle that they're telling us that we'll get, right? And it fits into who I am and the person I want to project. And that happens with every retail environment, not just the big name brands. Even smaller brands have that same thing.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That persona that you want to project. I use that analogy all the time when I try and tell people that people buy from you. If exactly what you just said, people buy from you because they want to feel a certain way and they want other people to look at them a certain way. It's why you have luxury goods. It's why you have budget goods. There are some people who have form over function and some people who have function over form. So I love that idea of, putting the personality out there, but also sort of bringing in your brand values or what it is that really speaks to other people. Because if that comes through in your LinkedIn page, and I know that people are probably thinking, but my client, I can't put Facebook ads in front of my client. Well, I know you can do LinkedIn ads. That's a conversation, I think, for a different podcast, because there's a completely different strategy around those. But it's just about being connected. That's what LinkedIn is, isn't it? It's just connection after connection, because if they go on to their friend Jane's profile and they see that she's liked you and you've updated your tagline to be the Hampton Homewares curator, and Jane likes Hampton Homewares, where's she going to go straight away? She's going to go straight to your page and have a look.
Yeah, definitely. And LinkedIn is built on a foundation of connections. It's entirely about connections. And so having a lot of connections is really important, and just being present and connected. The thing is, I think with networking in general, whether it's online or in person, is you don't know where it might lead. You don't know who knows who or what that relationship can do for you. So having all of those connections and being on LinkedIn, it may not be it's not a short game. It's not like doing an ad and like suddenly you're gonna get a lot of business and it changes everything. It's more the long game. It's being present. It's being part of a community. It's being there and connecting with people. And then like you just said, you don't know if your friend is into what you are selling. And so having that presence and then connecting with more and more people, the way LinkedIn works is sort of like a tree with branches. So if I'm connected to you and you like something, now not only do I have you seeing it, but everyone that you're connected with now sees whatever it is I just shared. So the more connections you have, the broader your reach will be and the more eyes you get in front of. And you just don't know who knows who, right? And you don't know who those people might know that might be interested in you for whatever reason, whether it's as a client or as somebody who's hiring speakers or as a media representative, or maybe as a potential partner, somebody who wants to collaborate with you on something, another brand that wants to do some sort of joint venture with you. So you just don't know the possibilities of what's there. But I can say if you're not there, you'll never find out. You're missing out.
Oh, yes. Okay, you mentioned there about the information that you're pushing out. can you go into a little bit more detail about the different types of information that you can put on LinkedIn that can be share-worthy?
Sure. And there's several ways to share content on LinkedIn. And the two that are probably the most relevant and important are your status updates and then creating original articles. And so status updates are just like they are on Facebook, and you can manage them using something like Hootsuite or another program for social media. And basically, I recommend doing 2 to 4 of them a day. You could sit down in an hour on some scheduling thing and get them all done. And your goal there really is just to be active, because LinkedIn gives preference in search results to people who are active. So if you're not doing anything to engage with the site, you're less likely to show up. So one way to just show LinkedIn that you care and you're being engaged is to just do some status updates, and scheduling them out makes that very simple. And so you want to share, quotes, like inspirational quotes that relate to what you do, or share some tips, ask questions, share content about your industry, either stuff that you find other people wrote or things that you write. And so that's the really simple way. And then going in every once in a while into your feed and just liking some things and commenting on things also is really great, shows LinkedIn you care. The other big thing is you can write original articles. LinkedIn has its own publishing platform that's kind of like an internal blog. They call it Pulse. And there's right there on your page, you'll see write an article. You can write it right within there. They don't have to be super long. There's no real rules to how you do this on LinkedIn. But the big thing with those is when someone does come to your profile, and I think this is especially important if you're looking for media attention or to become a speaker, maybe less so for looking for clients, although it can still be helpful. But if somebody clicks on your profile, one of the things that tends to be at the top is your activity, and that shows all the articles you've written. So if somebody's checking you out to say, oh, could this person really be a good speaker for us? Do they know their stuff? Are they the expert? Or could I quote them? Are they an expert in their industry? If you've written great articles that show you know this industry better than anyone, that you know whatever it is you're selling better than anyone, then of course they're going to be like, oh yeah, clearly this person knows what they're talking about. So it's a great way for some social proof to show that you know your stuff, to set yourself out as a thought leader in your industry. And it's also, again, another way to show LinkedIn that you're there, you're present, you're participating, and they'll put you higher in results. And I don't think that has to be anything major. One time a month, go in and write a 500-word piece for LinkedIn about your industry. That's not a lot of commitment of time, but just that little bit. I mean, by the end of the year, you'll have 12 articles that show up under your name on search results when they go into your profile, and that can be really huge.
And I guess it all comes back to what you said right at the beginning, which was having a strategy. So knowing what it is that you actually want from LinkedIn, whether you want the PR or the speaking or the clients, will depend on the kind of content you push out. Because I was sitting here thinking, if you were looking for your potential customers, then maybe you might want to copy some product reviews out of your blog and put them into articles. But if your biggest game is to get PR attention, then maybe you skew it more about, say, trends in your industry, or what's trending and new products that have come into the store and why they're on trend. Would that be correct?
Definitely. And again, you're right, because it's really all about that strategy, which part of that is knowing the keywords that you want to be known for, but it also goes beyond that. It's really that big picture of how do I want to use this particular channel to help my business? And the more clear and the more focused you are around that, the more success you'll have, which again is the case with really anything that you're doing with networking or marketing. I mean, the more focused you are and the more you know what results you're hoping to get, the better you're going to be able to create content or have your presence reflect that. And that will show for people who are coming to look for you.
And I just wanted to talk to you just about groups. Now, I've tried the groups thing, and I have to admit, I just left it all alone, because the groups that I joined seemed to just be spam. And then I started getting spam DM messages of people trying to sell me, things from all over the world. And tell me how to make the most out of groups. Are they worth it, or are they just spam centers?
Quite frankly, I'm almost in the same boat as you. I wouldn't say that they're all spam centers, and there are, just like in Facebook or other places, there are great groups and there are really bad groups. And it's a real process of trial and error to find out which ones are good and bad. And I think it depends on how much time you want to spend there. I think for retailers, it may not be as important as for somebody who's really trying to sell a service to other businesses, because you are more likely to potentially find some clients through from LinkedIn groups than somebody who's a retailer. So I would say, because I've had similar experiences and I've had some groups that have been great, honestly, the thing I have found to be the most beneficial with groups is more for peer relationships, for learning opportunities and collaborations with peers than for any sort of lead generation. So I think if you have limited time to devote to LinkedIn, I really don't think that that's the best place to be using your time. I say it's all about finding connections that make sense, which groups can help with that. But the problem is it seems, I think the amount of time you have to spend within there to find those really great connections may not be the best use of time. So finding connections just through people you've met in real life or you've met virtually, and also doing some search, because there's a lot of great search function that can be useful for finding connections. And then keeping your profile really updated and doing a lot of content curation and creation. I think that's the most important way to use LinkedIn. And really, I don't think you need to worry so much about groups.
Okay. And you just had the perfect segue to my next question, which was, what is connection etiquette? How do you go out and connect with people? Like if PR is your strategy, is it okay to just go and find a whole bunch of media people and connect with them? Do you just press the connect button? Like what is connection etiquette?
So LinkedIn is different than Facebook because we don't share a lot of personal things on LinkedIn, which is great. So we're not putting out photos of us in our, swimsuit on vacation, and we're not talking about our kids. So there's really, you don't need to protect so much about your profile. It's basically the kind of information they're going to find there is what they would find on your website, or if you were to hand them a resume in real life. So anyone that you would be willing to hand over a resume to in real life is okay to connect with, right? So we don't need to be so nervous about accepting or requesting connections. And people are accustomed to that and used to getting requests from people they don't know. That said, if you want to have a higher acceptance rate, and I think this is even more important, if you want to have those connections actually turn into relationships that can be beneficial, then you need to go a step further than just using that auto-generated connection request that LinkedIn will create. Because that tells somebody you just didn't care enough to do anything more. Don't just hit connect and then walk away. Take a moment. So do your research. If there's some media people or whoever it is you're wanting to connect with, find them. Then click on their profile and find one thing that you can talk about in that connection request. Maybe you went to the same university. Maybe you worked for the same employer at one point in your life. Maybe they wrote an article that you thought was really amazing. Whatever it is, find something in their profile that you can either relate to or compliment them on something, and then mention that in that connection request. Hey, I am in this industry. I saw your article about whatever. I thought it was really insightful because you really understand what it is we're doing in this industry, and I would love to connect so that I can learn more from you. Something like that. Make it about them. Try to stroke their ego a little if you can, or at least find some shared connection, something that's of interest to both of you, and then connect. And then when they accept, now take the next step of actually reply and say, hey, thanks for connecting. And don't pitch them yet. Still, in this next conversation is when you start to ask them a little bit more about themselves. Tell me more about whatever. Tell me about your background. I saw you worked at whatever. What was that like? Or what are you seeing in this industry? Something. Ask them a question that gets them interested and engaged and responding to you. And then you're starting a conversation. And that's when you can start to say, let me tell you a little bit about myself. Or more likely, once you've shown interest in them and asked them questions, they're going to turn around and ask you about you, right? It's a more natural and less sleazy way of having that sales conversation or pitching yourself for speaking or whatever than just hitting connect. And then if they accept it, saying, okay, here's my thing, because you're going to really quickly become a spammer that no one likes. But when you take that more personal and engaged approach, people appreciate it. They like it, and they're going to remember you because it's not happening that much on LinkedIn. So you will stand out.
Do you know what I like about that strategy is it makes you cherry pick the people that you want to connect with, because otherwise you just find everybody and you go connect. But the way that you've said it is you now have to take some time to build that connection, and you can't do that with 50 people. You're just going to go and pick, 2 or 3 or 5 and work. I was going to say work on those people, but maybe work with those people would be a better way of saying it. Work with those people to develop a relationship. So instead of being a sleazy spammer. Just go and develop those relationships with the people that you would love to do business with or love to talk to in the future. I love that concept.
Right. And you may think like somebody's immediate reaction might be like, but I could send out 100 requests the other way. And this way I'm only sending out 5. But if you send out 100 requests that feel spammy, you might get 0 responses. If you send out 5 thoughtful personal connection requests, you might get 5 responses and 5 conversations and relationships that start. So 5 is much better than 0, even though you're starting with a much lower number. So it's about quality, not quantity. And I think a lot of times in all sorts of aspects of our business, we flip that and we worry way too much about quantity and not nearly enough about quality.
Yeah, and one of those things about taking that spammy approach is while someone might agree to connect with you, they have no memory of you now. You just become another connection. So they're not going to remember that you are the eco baby specialist or the Hampton homewares curator or the organic skincare, developer. All they're going to know is that they connected with you. But those 5 people, they're going to know a little bit more about you. They're already going to have a little bit of trust going. And so when those words, whatever it is that you're trying to project, what the story that you're trying to get across, when they come up, they're going to think straight away, oh, that was Selena. Or that's that girl. Even if they don't remember your name, I remember I connected with that person on LinkedIn. I'll just go back through my messages. Can't think of her name right now, but I'll go back through my messages and find her.
And I was just going to say, and if there are people if there are some really special connections that you really want to foster, so if it's particularly like, let's say media, and it's somebody that covers your industry and you really, really want them to write about you, and you've made that initial connection and you've planted that seed, go back once a quarter. It's not like you'll do this with all your connections, but the really important ones that you really want to foster, once a quarter, just do a check-in. They're not getting that a lot from people, especially when it's not a sales check-in. It's not you every quarter saying, come buy my thing. But once a quarter, you're saying, hey, how's it going? Or what have I saw this new thing you wrote or something. It keeps you top of mind, and that can be really great. And LinkedIn's a great way to do that because you really do stand out from the million emails they're getting and everything else that's happening to them.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if we're talking about PR, journalists need to write stories, right? And journalists are always looking for a really quick way to find a quote or a product to feature or some sort of resource because they are under the pump. In the digital age, it's bang, 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 bang. I have to get that story out. So they end up with their little black book of people that become their go-to people. So if you're doing exactly what you just said and checking back in once a quarter, the next time that comes up, you're going to be the first person that they come to.
Yeah. And as a former journalist, I can totally say that is absolutely true. I would have people that would take a really great personal relationship approach to things and play the long game. And it would always end up paying off because I didn't know when I might need them. But the fact that they were checking in and that they weren't being sleazy and they weren't overwhelming me, I would remember those people. And when something would come up, I would be like, oh, I know exactly who I can talk to. And so that's kind of the thing with PR. There are, you can do certain things, sending out a lot of press releases, and sometimes that stuff is going to lead to something. But particularly when you're trying to DIY your PR and you don't have an agency behind you, it can be difficult. But one of the things you can do is form relationships, nurture those relationships. And it doesn't have to take a ton of time. Create a little spreadsheet or something where you have those key people that you want to eventually have quoting you and just mark off the last time you checked in on them and just keep up on it, and it may get frustrating because you may think, oh, I've been doing this for 3 quarters now and nothing's happened. But it's the kind of thing that will eventually pay off. And that one article that they write could be worth a lot of money, what you would have spent in advertising. So it's a long game, but it can really be beneficial.
And we're not talking a lot of time either. To send one of those little LinkedIn messages, 2 minutes. So you set aside half an hour every quarter to reach out to your five people that you're trying to develop relationships with. That's nothing in the grand scheme of things. Half an hour every quarter.
Exactly. And the same thing goes for speaking. And some of those speaking gigs could be paying gigs that are like not just translating into money as in advertising, but as in literal dollars in your hand. And so, yes, it's absolutely something that is a small amount of effort for a potential for really great gain. It's just the kind of thing, though, that you don't necessarily get that immediate gratification that you might with like doing Facebook ads. But the people that are willing to invest the time and energy into this, it can really pay off for them because, like I said, a lot of people aren't doing it because they really want to play that short game and get the immediate results. So if you're somebody who's willing to put in just a little bit of time and effort for the, big picture, boy, can it really pay off.
You've given us so much information. Have you got this all tied up somewhere that people could download? Have you got
Sure.
anything?
I do. I have a LinkedIn course it's really geared for small business owners who are newer to LinkedIn and know that they want to try and start using it, but feel really lost on how to make it anything more than just a resume online. So if that's something that's of interest to you, I walk you through in videos how to really just use it. That you can go to my website and then it's just /LinkedIn, one word, and you can sign up for the course. It's really inexpensive. The other thing that I have is a free ebook. It's a more of a guide, I guess, on how to use LinkedIn that kind of goes over some of the highlights. And that's also on my website. And it's just /LinkedIn ebook. I think it's linked-in-ebook, but I'm sure we can provide that maybe in the show notes or something so that people can go and get that for free if they're interested too.
I think so, because if people have been listening to this on the go, they're going for a run or they're driving on their way to work, they're thinking, oh, I have to do that, 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 and your whole brain gets a little bit overwhelmed. So this is awesome that you've got a download. So we will definitely link to that in the show notes. Now, my last question for you is, what is your most favorite store?
My most favorite store. Is it okay if it's like really, I don't know, so pedestrian because everyone probably says it, but I love Target and they get me. Like I go into Target intending to spend $2. Like I have a single thing I want to buy. And there's something about that place where I get sucked in. It's the colors, it's the light, it's the fact that it's affordable and it's fun. And I'll spend $200 without meaning to. So it's ridiculous, but I love it. But I also am a collector of vinyl records. And so there's a record store in my city that's just a local store called Vintage Vinyl. And I really love it too, because I get in there and I get lost in all of these like just bins and bins of records. And I could go in there and spend hours. And actually I might only buy one or two things because I have so many now I have to stop myself, but I can spend hours looking through everything they have.
How big is your record collection?
About 2,000 albums right now, which is ridiculous. My husband and I we're both collectors and we have way too many. We listen to, but I will say we actually listen. It's not like you just sit there and collect us. We really listen to records with our family every night when we make dinner. So it's something that we love doing.
Oh, that's great. I had that image of, do you watch Suits? Where Harvey has
I've not seen it.
Oh, Harvey Specter has this giant, think of like one of those IKEA cubes, but a whole wall of them, and it is filled with vinyl records.
Well, we have two of those IKEA cubes filled with records, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I will have to check out the show now that I know that he collects records.
Oh, you have to watch Suits. That's it's lots of fun, and it's one of those shows you can watch, and sometimes you can pick it apart, and it's just not hard to watch. At the end of the day, I can't watch shows that make you think too hard because my brain just needs a little bit of a de-stress. So. There's a bit of eye candy in there for the men. There's a bit of eye candy for the women. I like to pick apart the continuity. That doesn't quite work sometimes, but it's a fun show.
That's good. I a lot of times do my brainless Real Housewives stuff, and that's just really bad. So maybe it's time for me to upgrade my brainless show to something a little bit better.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your LinkedIn tips. I know that before we jumped on, you were a little bit like, I don't know if I can skew this for retailers, but I think you have nailed it. I think you've told people exactly the kind of strategies that they can implement to make LinkedIn work for them. And even though I use LinkedIn now, I've written a whole page of notes of things that I need to go back and check and fix myself. So thank you so much for being on the show today. And thank you so much for having those downloads available. We'll definitely put the links to those in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was great.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selenaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selenaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.